This is the Zac Anesbury Show.
Welcome. This podcast clip comes from an interview with Ryan Buckle from Top Shelf International. I've worked with you before, but did you want to give everyone a little bit of overview as to who you are and what your current role is?
Yeah, so I've been in FMCG pretty much the entire time from a career perspective. Came through a couple of sales gigs as a marketing graduate. It was a normal sort of pathway, I would say, in those days. You sort of went into the coalface of like a territory manager job, so you could appreciate what it was like trying to sell the things you would market in the future. And then just a series of assistant brand manager roles, brand manager, senior brand manager, the same old story. And a couple of big organisations, Mars and Lion, over the last sort of 10 plus years. So a very standard marketing career, I would say, to this point. So you tend to just go in different levels of jobs, and then if you're lucky enough, you might get an experience outside of the country of birth, which was great at Mars. I did 4.5 years stint in Asia Pac, and then back into a local business now, I would say. It doesn't necessarily have the influence of a big multinational, but is a very big player in the Australian market on its own. So that's the basic sort of pathway, I would say. Lots of different brands, different categories. Pet care and dairy might seem a bit different, but they are largely the same in terms of what they're offering the consumer. So, it's pretty stock standard.
Yeah, so just going back to what you said earlier, so you did a Bachelor of Business Marketing and IT at Charles Sturt University.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that and I thought, how come you had the combination there? Was that like a deliberate strategy, or was it just something that had occurred, almost serendipitously, or...?
Yeah, there was an accountancy stint before that as well, so
okay.
That probably just even complicates the story even more. But I think wasn't quite boring enough, maybe, no offence to the accountants out there, to be in that space yet. I'm actually glad, though, in hindsight. I mean, most organisations are very centred in the P&L, so if you can wax fluently in that space, it's good territory to be in. Marketing was more just from the creativity standpoint. I didn't really know at the time. I think when you leave school, it's sort of like, what's the thing that's going to give you the best opportunity to access some different career paths. And then maybe at the time I was thinking that IT was going to be big in terms of the application of IT for business. So I didn't really take it any further than that. But I mean, you look at today, it's online is going to be a big thing. It definitely has been in Melbourne for the last 8 weeks with people's restricted movements and I guess the scarcity of wanting to go into store. But that was kind of the background. But it was always, marketing was sort of where I wanted to end up. I think when you have a bit of creativity as a natural bent, there's an entrepreneurial spirit probably that goes with it.
Yeah.
And there's no better way to cultivate that with someone else's money and organisational resources. So that's probably how it all came about. I would love to say it's by design, Zach, but you just sort of fall into these things when you're coming out of your teenage years and into your early 20s, and that's sort of the path that I landed on.
Okay, so did you find that you had a knack, or you kind of went that way when you were growing up, or it kind of sounds like you did in a sense?
A little bit. I think you sort of get probably more so today, but you definitely, opening an internet browser or the paper every second day and reading about some billionaire entrepreneur that was living in a shoebox only 5 years before. They don't talk about the ones that were catastrophic failures, but I think it's a form of expression for me. I think that I have never been an artist, but I imagine the process of creation is a big part of the journey. And I think, fortunately, in marketing, particularly in FMCG, you get the opportunity fairly regularly to sort of put your stamp on something. So I think at a core level, it probably comes from that. And then maybe also for me, a bit of a fascination about how consumers behave and, the psychology that goes on behind it, brands, and, when you overlay the financial part of brand as well and how it creates enormous value for organisations. I think when you put that big melting pot together, it's sort of, I can look back with 20/20 vision and say, I can kind of work out why I've ended up where I have. But that's the basic probably story to it.
Yeah. And then so you moved into industry. Did you want to tell us about your first role as a product specialist?
Yeah, so that was so I was still in the sales realm at that time, and it was just a personal move to get back to Albury, where I'm from. So up on the border of New South Wales and Victoria, it's a nice part of the world. And I think I was sort of probably more interested in that stage of, facilitating a lifestyle necessarily than a big career move. So I spent quite a bit of time back in Albury in that role. Now, it's with the pharmaceutical company. So Janssen Sealag's basically owned by Johnson & Johnson. Massive organisation, great history. And I was really drawn to the J&J history. It's a typical sort of wartime story and how it was built. And for me, it was just probably a higher level of selling. I thought if I could convince health practitioners to prescribe one medication over another through the science, then it would set me up for sales jobs long term. But I think I got to the end of that little journey and I thought I just need to get overseas and probably broaden the horizons a bit. I think it's one of the first lessons in life that you learn, that perspective's hard to gather when you stare at the same thing all the time. So I went overseas for a couple of years, and then that's how the Mars journey sort of started from there. But it was an interesting little sojourn. I don't think I'd go back to pharmaceuticals in a hurry. My sister, incidentally, is a marketer in pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
It's just a very different world. It's a bubble, and there's lots of constraints and restrictions, like there should be, right? I mean, you're talking about human health and care, so it was a bit probably too cut and dry for me.
Is she in Australia at the moment?
She is, yes.
Okay.
So she's in Melbourne too. So it's they're in sort of more in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, those kind of things. So really interesting subjects, but wasn't probably like the accountancy career, wasn't quite ready to be what I thought was boring at that stage.
Yeah. The only reason I asked is because I could imagine it'd be a whole different kettle of fish with the regulations and the way you can market things in place.
Hey guys, it's Zac Anesbury here with just a couple of quick reminders. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, then make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. There are plenty more interviews to come with some of the world's leading marketing academics and practitioners. You do not want to miss these. In the meantime, if you're looking for another way to connect, then follow me on Twitter at Zac Anesbury. That is ZACANESBURY for my take on the marketing issues of the day.